Bem-vindo a uma edição especial do Codex. Eu pude fazer uma entrevista com o Brian Holinka, lead designer de PVP de World of Warcraft, onde nós conversamos sobre o patch 6.0.2, sobre o Warlords of Draenor, o caminho que ele acha para o PVP de World of Warcraft, raid míticas, o item squish e por que da redução das habilidades das classes agora em Warlords of Draenor. Então vocês vão poder saber um pouco mais do que a Blizzard espera do PVP e do PvE de World of Warcraft para o Warlords of Draenor nessa entrevista exclusiva do Codex com Brian Holinka. Aproveitem!
Brian, how are you? Fine?
Good, yeah, I'm doing good. So there's a lot of the things that we've done in Warlords of Draenor from a system standpoint are going to be in the 6.02 patch. So players are going to see the numbers squish, where we take all the numbers down across like their health pools, their damage numbers, stats on gear. All those things are going to be reduced to a more reasonable number. So that'll be something players experience right away. However, the relative damage that players do to creatures, to each other or out in the world, we've tried to maintain that as much as possible. So everyone's going to see that right away. Players are also going to experience a lot of the changes that we've made to classes and talents for Warlords of Draenor. So people are going to see that a lot of the abilities have been pruned and reduced to be a lot more manageable. And we've tried to do a good job of reducing abilities we didn't feel like had a very significant everyday use for most players. So players are going to see that all right away and going to get to basically play their class exactly like they would play them in Warlords of Draenor. Then we also have two new pieces of content to help kind of introduce the story of Warlords of Draenor. First, the zone, the Blasted Lands, has kind of been transformed for this part of the expansion, this introduction to the expansion. Basically what's happened is Garage House Scream has traveled back to Draenor and kind of circumvented the events there that led the Orc clans to be possessed by the demons of the Burning Legion, and kind of rallied all those Orc clans together into the Iron Horde. And they've constructed the Dark Portal to bring that army back into our Azeroth. So right now, at the beginning of the expansion, in this pre-patch, the Iron Horde is storming through the Dark Portal and invading the Blasted Lands. They've kind of taken over Netherguard Keep, where the Alliance had a stronghold. They're marching on Blackrock Mountain and kind of reclaiming something that's very important for them. So what you're seeing now is in the pre-patch, players will have some quests. They'll be trying to repel the invasion, kind of figure what was going on. We'll also have available to them for the duration of the pre-patch, for the pre-expansion event, they'll have access to a level 90 dungeon for Upper Blackrock Spire, which has kind of been transformed by this Iron Horde invasion.
About the chains in Blasted Lands, they are temporary, or they are going to be like the chains in Stormwind, or they are going to be just for this pre-patch?
Yeah. So my understanding is that this area, there's a quest that we kind of push to you when you log in, when you're max level, that kind of says, go to the Dark Portal. And only players on that quest will be in this phase of the Blasted Lands. We'll see that. So players who are still kind of lower level, going to Burning Crusade, they'll still see the old Blasted Lands. But any player that's kind of on the quest to kind of lead into this expansion, they'll see that area.
Oh, okay. About the item squish, some players, they were expecting to see numbers like Vanilla or the Burning Crusade. Some players are worried that they are going to need a new item squish in 2 or 3 expansions.
Yeah. It's likely that we'll have to do a squish again at some point. I think 2 things are kind of misleading for players. One is, you're comparing your level 90 character to a level 100 character, right? So if you look at a level 90 character and how far they've been squished, it's a pretty big difference. They were going from like 300, 400, 500 health to something like 20 or 30K or something like that. It's pretty low. So I think that that's probably a more direct comparison. What we did, we had systems in the game called resilience that allowed, kind of prevented player versus player damage from getting out of hand. And that number was very big. It was like 80%. So players did 1/5 of the damage to another player that they did to a monster. So it was a very disjointed experience. So we wanted to get rid of that. We wanted to get rid of that resilience factor. And so what that meant we had to do in order to keep things growing, but kind of get rid of resilience, was we had to grow the health pools back to being pretty large. So we actually doubled the health pools. So that would kind of be like right now if everybody had almost 2 million health. So we're almost squishing from there down to like 300K. So in the end, originally if we had kept resilience in, maybe everybody would have had health pools about 150K or something. But because you want to get rid of resilience, we doubled everybody's health pool. And so that's kind of what led us to this point. It may mean that at some point we have to do a squish again, but I think what just happened was we had to rapidly increase our health pools. Yeah, definitely over time, every expansion, we wanted to give something new to the players in terms of their class abilities. And we've just gotten to the point now where we think we've hit critical mass. We think now is important because we're doing a number of other things that are like this, reducing health, reducing that. So we felt like it was a great opportunity for us to reduce the ability count as much as possible without kind of killing the soul of each class. And that kind of creates some room for us to be able to add abilities again in the future. I mean, this is just the nature of a game that's been around for 10 years. So hard for a game to keep adding things and create something new and fresh, and not get to a point where it's, has a lot of content, a lot of abilities in it. So we've just gotten to the point where we decided now is the time. It had to happen sometime. We decided now is the time, and that's why we've come to this decision now. We're going to continue to balance the game, and a lot of times, we do a lot of internal testing, we do a lot of external iteration, and nothing is as revealing as giving the game to players on the live realm. And so I think some things will come to light. Some we may find some abilities are too strong, or some aren't very appealing at all. And we'll look at that, and there's certainly a chance that we will make some more changes during the expansion. Now, what we try not to do in the middle of an expansion is completely redesign a class. We try to avoid doing that as much as possible. So it's very unlikely that you'll see a spec, core rotation change profoundly during the course of this expansion. But you may see some talents get tweaked, redesigned, some abilities change in our interactions. You may see a new ability here or there if we feel like it's necessary. But generally, we don't want to do big overhauls during the course of an expansion.
Okay.
Yeah, I think when you look in the past and trying to support, both 10-man and 25-man heroic versions of every raid, that's a big constraint. That's a big thing. You have to, when you're deciding the 25-man versus the 10-man, and they're both kind of, the rewards are fairly the same, and you kind of got to balance them against each other. So now you're balancing, a raid composition of 10 players versus a raid composition of 25-man players. And I think what that did is it put a lot of constraints on our designers, on our encounter designers. They basically had to say, well, these mechanics, we can't say, 25-man, we can assume we have all these classes, so, create really complicated and complex mechanics that are more difficult than the 10-man heroic, especially if they're giving the same amount of gear. Because that 10-man heroic, it requires less people, to coordinate. You don't want that content to be easier. So our encounter designers are always shooting to try and make those two difficulties the same, and I think that limited them a bit. They couldn't maybe do some things that they wanted to do. Now with Mythic being one, this is Mythic, this is the hardest content, this is the number of players that you need there, 20. I think what that does is it makes it very easy for our encounters designers to say, yes, we can create something that is geared specifically towards a composition of raiders that has almost every type of spec represented. We basically can really go at players with a lot more challenging content than we have in the past. And I think that's going to be the general response to this. I think even on beta, players have already kind of said that, hey, this is some really good content, this mythic content, we really like it. So I think this is very freeing for our designers. And I can tell you, working in game design for over a decade, the less constraints you have, the better. And I think this kind of takes a big constraint off our encounter designers. So with a lot of the time during Mists, a lot of my focus was primarily on increasing participation and accessibility in our PvP. And what I saw right away when I got here was that normal battlegrounds are by far the biggest thing that anyone does in PvP, by like an order of magnitude. The ability to solo queue it, I think, has a very big impact on that. So it's very easy for players to go play battlegrounds, and they do. And looking at arenas, seeing, and just my own experience being with the teams that we had, it was hard for you to participate in this part of the game if, a couple other people weren't online. If you did have, if the right people weren't online. So we removed teams, and I think that, and we provided some more rewards for participating in PvP, and I think that had a very positive effect on high-end PvP. So I think for Warlords, adding skirmishes is going to be a big boom to both the player who used to do Battlegrounds now has something new that they can do solo. I think it's going to introduce some people to Arena. Maybe they've been kind of apprehensive about doing Arena before, so maybe they'll try out skirmishes. Maybe they'll like it, and maybe they'll do rated arenas, so I think that will help a great deal. So I think skirmishes will be really good. Also, I just think skirmishes that players, on one side of the faction imbalance problem, who have long battleground queues, they're going to be able to go do skirmishes to earn honor and earn honor gear. So I think it's actually going to help battleground queue times indirectly. So that, I think, will be positive. And then I think just having Ashran around, I think it's going to be a really great experience for players. There are a lot of PvE players who did PvP back in the day when it was just Hillsbred and South Shore and Terran Mill. They like the big battleground. They like lobbing frostbolts and blizzards from afar. And Ashran kind of provides them that experience. And I think that's kind of like the introductory experience for all the, it's kind of like the gateway to all the other forms of PvP. So I think what will happen is more people will be PvPing in Warlords of Draenor than ever before. That's essentially how I feel. And so my focus kind of for Warlords is going to be continuing to create cool content for Ashran, paying attention to class balance issues for skirmishes and arenas and battlegrounds, and then maybe focusing on something new for the future, something new that players might want to do. Whether it be another Ashran type of mode, something with more battlegrounds, arenas, I don't know. We're talking about a bunch of different ideas. But I think we could stand to have a new kind of bracket of PvP. Yeah, so we have some things that we're kind of looking at right now. Ashran, there's a couple things that we can do. One thing about Ashran, I have to say, it's really hard to design perfectly this thing that requires like 300 people to be on it all the time. So the experience that we get in our internal testing may not be exactly like live. So part of it is we want to see what happens when this thing goes live, and if there are any lessons and things we can refine and change. So a bit of that is going to be wait and see till it hits live, see how players react and what any problems are. So that'll be the first thing, try and fix any issues that come up. And then, you know, we have parts of Ashran we haven't explored. There's the beaches along the east side of the island that are behind the mountains. There are some mines in Ashran that haven't really, they're kind of closed right now. And, you know, kind of left some hints throughout Ashran that, hey, that's, you know, there's something down there, you know. So, you know, we're looking at what we can do to bring some new content. It's definitely something we want to update throughout the expansion. That's at least our intention right now is to try and update it. You never know what happens. We want to release these expansions at a faster clip, and so sometimes that means we can't add as much content to the current expansion because we wanted that other expansion to come out soon. So right now our intention is to try and update it with some new content, and we're hoping we can do that.
Thank you very much for this talk.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye.